Angus Joseph, welcome to Troublemakers.
Hello, thank you. Very happy to be here.
Great to have you at the climate camp. I hope you've been having a good time.
It's been pretty incredible, actually. Such an amazing, diverse group of people, and really so good to see the rest of the world represented in a kind of demographically kind of accurate way. So,
Yeah, beautiful.
Really important and really powerful. And about a month ago, I went to the Activism conference, the inaugural Activism conference that was in Swane in South Africa. And they too did really well in ensuring that this was a rest of the world / global south centric space.
Yeah, it's nice to have those sacred times and spaces. I mean, it's so difficult, to get so many people with such, eclectic experiences and backgrounds together in one place. It's really hard.
Yes, and the potential that it holds is really massive for conversations between global south movements and organizations, and working towards common narratives and strategies and solidarity actions. Yeah, I think it's a good resettling of power lines, and we're in a situation where we choose what those lines are. So it's positive. It's great.
Yeah. I'm glad. Yeah, I'm glad to hear that from you. We want to talk today about clowning around the world, or at least we want to start there. It may go elsewhere. Most of our episodes are framed around a beautiful trouble tool in the toolkit online, and one of those tools is about the story of the clandestine rebel insurgent clown army, which I understand you have interacted with before. So I'd love to ask you about that experience and about your experience more broadly with clowning.
Sure. That was quite a special time. That was COP21 2015, Paris State of Emergency. And within that, well, what that means essentially is that in terms of people appearing in public under a political or ideological banner, the maximum number was 2. And we now had the world's largest climate conference, and thousands of people planning to meet for the regular global day of action, which is a time to visually demonstrate that people from all over the world are standing for climate justice and pushing for a new frame. And I was connected to the movement in Paris through a few strings, but one of them was the Jungle House, which is one of my projects. And so we basically had established a pop-up temporary autonomous hub. So in Paris, this took the form of a 4-story factory that was squatted, and we
specifically for that COP.
Specifically to house global south people, because a lot of the people that are outside of the official process at the climate conferences are not people coming from NGOs, are not people coming with a budget. So
right,
we would set these houses up to facilitate that, and more importantly to create home, and to offer the idea that community is another tool that needs to be added to the toolkit. And so while we were, that's the reason that I was in Paris, and this house housed a lot of different teams. I see the world in a story form because it helps me deal with the world. So they were the Art Ninja, and I was a part of this team, and that is like poets, theater people, painters, musicians who were stepping into this highly charged political space to offer our skills. And they were the Jedi. And the Jedi, the reason why I call them Jedi is because Jedi have the ability to get their lightsaber to move to them, so they really have the ability to use mental power to move objects and shape the environment. And these were people that were interfacing with the authorities and with the medical services and police and political parties and intelligence and military to help facilitate this global day of action. So the response within the authorities was that can't happen because it goes against the state of emergency limitations. And the response from the Jedi were, well, we're not putting this together, so we can't call this off. This is happening and we are here to interface.
Right. Yeah.
And so, as I understand it, a deal was struck under the table at the 11th hour. So the terms of the deal, it was a temporary, unofficial suspension of the state of emergency limitations for the period of this global day of action. And in exchange, we had to deliver no bad news. Like no bad imagery on the news, no broken glass, no burning bins, and no fists flying around. And so the Art Ninja, we had gone through a 2-day Theatre of the Oppressed experimental training sessions. It's just 2 days. And we were the self-created, self-appointed de-escalation team. So because we needed there to be peaceful vibes at all times, especially optically, we then practiced a few techniques on how to repattern people. So we would patrol the perimeter between, let's just say, people and control or police, that liminal space that exists between protesters and the police. And the only other characters that can inhabit this space without creating aggression directly are the clowns. So this is within this liminal space, we kind of circled the perimeter and went to wherever there were disruptive forces, and then used movement, music, humor, and some of this like group movement, Theatre of the Oppressed group movement, swarming techniques to repattern people, to take the aggression and the anxiety down. And so that was my interaction with the clowns. It's also a love story. Aren't the best stories love stories?
Of course.
In the house in Paris, I met Alina Clandestina, and she is a clown and had come to Paris specifically to find the clown army. And so we met, and it was a case of the ninja meeting the clown in Paris. And so we began to see the need for the Art Ninja group, the street theater performance musician group, to be connected to the clown army while we are fulfilling this function of being a de-escalation team. So Clandestina and myself traveled to find Clownistan, which is the moving Republic of Clown. And they were inhabiting a building. And so we eventually tracked them down and spoke to them about this and kind of brokered some sort of very unofficial deal. And we always say that the love of the clown and the love of the ninja created a love child, which was Clown Ninja. Just an attempt to combine the best of these worlds within a climate justice and a direct action and a frontline lens.
Who is Clown Ninja?
Clown Ninja, we thought would be a great thing to teach kids. we thought it's basically, let's just say, martial arts and theater at the core of it. And it was the passion that I have for like martial arts and for strategic thinking, meeting the power of the clown and the capacity for satire to get away with saying things that you can't really say in a serious voice.
So, I mean, why do all this? Why not be like, you know, a normal, outraged, angry person raging in the streets, doing all the things the state, the police, the corporation anticipate? Why take these kind of routes? Apart from the de-escalation, surely there's something more, yeah?
Yeah. Why take this route? That's a very good question. I think for myself, kind of going the traditional routes really didn't seem to be yielding results. And it didn't do my mental health much good as well, kind of running down lines that have already been run and are clearly not bringing about the kind of resolutions that we want. And I also felt that there were many people that were taking those roles and positions. And in breaking out of that, because I was also very traditionalist in my approach to how do I resist, how do I protest. I just found a inevitable wall that these strategies were leading to. And in stepping out of them, I found autonomy, freedom, and power to operate within myself. And then the clowning my first kind of interaction with climate justice was in 2011. That was COP17, which was in Durban. That's the town that I was born in. And it was like post-Copenhagen. I think the European organizing forces were really down in the dumps after the extremities of Copenhagen and the amount of effort they'd put in and the little results that they'd gotten. And so the forces that came to Durban were not as complete and complex as they might be at a usual climate conference. And so a very ragtag group of locals from Durban in South Africa and a few people from around the world, we decided to use, based on reading Aban Circa, we formed something called the 1% Clown Army. So we were satirically representing for the rights of the rich and the elite and the banks. Trust the rich, we created this problem, surely we know how to fix it. And so that was really my introduction to clowning, and the amazement at how much of attention we got, media attention specifically. On the Global Day of Action, we were part of the team that helped to organize, especially from creating art. And as soon as the march left the starting point, the clowns jumped into our car. We drove to the end point, put on clown gear, and then ran to meet the crowd satirically protesting against the protest.
Yeah.
And demanding, but what about the rich? Like, we have feelings too.
Yeah, you've excluded us.
Yes. Right. And the fascinating thing is the amount of attention and the number of cameras that immediately turned to the person with the red nose. And we, in talking about it afterwards, we felt a bit bad because we were like, they're legitimate people with actual messages.
You did feel bad for the billionaires.
And at the same time, we were just so fascinated at how using this narrative frame of like clown and circus and carnival, that it allowed us to really speak such deep truth.
Mm.
So, for example, we made a short video to kind of highlight what our position was and what we were trying to achieve. And so we set up this little thing in a train station, and we were now like, what is the script? Like, what do we say? How do we find the words to explain or to like highlight the absurdity of what's going on, and especially the collusion of business and governance? And then we found like official releases, and then just started reading those. And then it suddenly it was so clear. It's like, wow, we don't have to search for absurdity. The absurdity is here, you know.
Yeah.
And so that is, I think, part of my kind of understanding of like, wow, in terms of like, A, how do I frame things, and then B, how do I get access to present my whatever my message is. All we had to do is pop on a clown nose and read what the businessmen and what the governments and stuff were issuing as official press releases. And in doing so, the absurdity was revealing itself. We didn't have to invent absurdity.
No, news comedy these days feels so easy. Like when there's some intelligible writing involved, of course, but they could almost just play clips, from the mainstream news and say almost no commentary, no like added comedy, It's already. Do you get the sense that like the world is becoming more absurd, more satirical, more is there a link between like the rise of fascism and kind of like the absurdity of it all?
I'm not sure about that link, but the thing that comes to my mind is Guy Debord and the theatre of the spectacle, and how I think we're at the point now where, if you go to YouTube, you can see like a react video, watching react videos of somebody reacting to a video, and it's like it's the snake is not even eating its own tail. It's like it's eating its own head by now.
Yeah.
And that is, it just like, it speaks to, I think, the general kind of global psyche, yes, is in this a really volatile and fractured state. And I think we are starting to see it seep through even what we would consider to be mainstream media. And, even state apparatus media and stuff. I think the world has gone kind of that mad, or the reflection upon the reflection upon the reflection is just creating this infinity loop. And yes, I do think, in terms of the fascism, this is just my opinion, I feel that that's slightly more orchestrated and organized, and that there are forces that for some reason wish to see more disorder in the world. And I think that those
How would that benefit them?
I think those gaps allow for vacuums of power and allow for acquisition of power subtly and overtly. We can see it with post-pandemic. How, just in terms of resources, such a tiny number of people have now just gathered more people and organizations. And
right.
Yeah.
Tell us about an action, any kind of like satirical action or humorous action or clown action that you tried that really didn't land. It just completely flopped.
In South Africa, satire doesn't always work. And sometimes you can get accused of representing the thing that you are trying to make fun of.
It's not totally intuitive that you're doing something satirical.
Yes.
So what happened?
I think it was just nothing in particular, but it didn't land. It's like people just kind of were really just confused and didn't understand. Again, like the 1% clown army, I think it made sense because there were people from all over the world there and media from all over the world, and in our attempts to reproduce this within the South African environment, it just didn't land and was kind of just scaled back. Yeah.
With that action, how many of the let's call them real protesters for lack of a better term, how many of them like immediately got it? Like, oh, this 1% clown army is actually doing us a favor here.
I think a lot did.
Yeah.
A lot did, because we were also part of the team that was organizing the Occupy COP17 site, and by default became like some of the local organizers.
Right.
And I mean, like in Latin America, it really just flows really well. And I think in Europe as well, I think it's the understanding of like the place of the clown and the place of the joker in political spaces and commentary is maybe a bit, people are a bit more exposed to it.
Right, right.
For example, I'm not sure how well it will work in Tanzania. Like we are in Tanzania at the moment, and I've only been here for like a few days, but I would be cautious to just rush out into full satirical mode. Yeah.
Right, right.
Unless there is absurdity around and available, because it feels as those are the moments when the clown appears.
It takes a lot of discipline also to kind of like stick to the character, stick to the script, you know, to I recall a time that in Uganda we were organizing against dictator Museveni's anti-corruption march. Right, so he's been in power 40 years, extremely kleptocratic regime, and he's organizing this anti-corruption march. You know, it's already satire,
Of course.
And so, you know, we had like, you know, maybe 3-4 meetings to discuss like, what are we going to do about this? Well, we can't really, it's going to look kind of complicated to just protest the anti-corruption march.
Of course.
What maybe we can actually appreciate what he's doing in a way that kind of captures the public imagination differently. And so where we kind of landed was like, let's have like a press conference where we clap for the dictator and say in honor of his pledge every 500 meters he's able to walk. He's also getting old, so he's trying to show the nation, I can do it, I can actually walk.
I have the vitality.
Yeah.
Yes.
My legs still work. So we said, for every X number of meters we're going to give X number of shillings to the opposition to appreciate their contribution against corruption.
Right.
And for the first minutes of that press conference, like, we had all these meetings, and a lot of these kind of like seasoned activists, let's say, were really in on it, and they're ready to kind of like do this thing in this satirical way. But the journalists would then start asking questions, and then actually Museveni is bad. Like the kind of like normative activism starts coming out, and then by then the whole thing is so confusing, and you've played like 2-3 different characters, you've had different tones, different styles of humor or seriousness, and it just kind of felt like, okay, it was like a missed opportunity. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's also a part of I don't want to say it's a part of like movement history, but maybe like the kind of nascent neoliberalism within kind of like movement culture where we kind of have these dumbed down messages, like 8 words or less. Like you have to be pithy, you have to be punchy, you have to grab public imagination in these sound bites. You're competing with like TikTok and all these things, right?
Of course, sure.
So it on one hand, it's a bit sensible, like why people kind of, reduce, their messages, and, you're just grabbing people to activate them. You're not trying to like enrich the depths of their intellect and all this kind of thing.
Sure.
But I do think that we kind of like miss, a lot in the kind of normal activist kind of decision making around like tactics, and it's one of the reasons that I think we really do need like storytellers and artists and performers and people to bring different lenses and depths to the kinds of things that we're engaging with.
100%. I mean, satirical cartoonists, I think that's something that maybe people can. I think a lot of people have experienced and interacted with this. In whichever country they're coming from, there's probably some artist who uses imagery, and imagery is great because you can embed symbolism within it. But to speak to that, I think around the world on probably every level, and also in kind of, let's just say, our activist organizing spaces, there is an old guard who are reluctant to try new things. And perhaps that's based on previous success with current strategies. I think in South Africa, we really had our rolling mass action and these kind of things which
consumer
worked.
boycott.
Yes.
Yeah.
And of course, they still have power, but in order to have your message spread in an environment where there's so much more noise and clutter and demand for attention, and I think in general, a lot of these movements are slow to move and to adapt and adopt. And that, I think, again, yes, is missed opportunities and maybe little victories that we've kind of given up because we just want to go the rote way. We just want to go with what we think we know is going to work.
Right.
Yeah.
Even if the very fact that we think we know it's going to work probably also means our opponents are like very prepared for us to use that strategy, and it may, for that very reason, be likely to work less than it has in the past. We have a comrade, Sophia McClennen. She's done some research on satire, and we'll link to it in the show notes. I think she found that satire is something like satirical dilemma actions she looks at are something like 17%. Campaigns that use these actions are 17% more likely to be successful, something like that. It's somewhere between, I think, 15 and 20%.
Gotcha.
So, there is like a group of researchers like trying to look at this with hard research, empirical analysis, and determine that, creativity is worth something, in political struggle.
It's interesting because there's always this question of like, as a movement or as organizations or organizers, this like deep fundamental question of like, in what ways are we using aspects of the system that we are critical of, know, and I think for a lot of artists, I'm guessing in the global south and probably in the global north as well, art governments come to creatives when they need somebody to sing or to dance, but not for future city planning.
Right.
And yet the artist is the one who has the capacity to A, see what is not there, and B, to be part of that manifestation process of creating something out of something that was not there before. And this is the danger, like as organizers and organizing movements and networks, how do we check and make sure that we are also not doing this? Like the creative mind, I mean, this is like handprints and paintings of animals on the cave.
Right.
This is so fundamentally part of human, as expression and also as a way to capture, store, and transfer information or data. The words are very often like, yes, we need the creative people and we need the storytellers, but I think those creatives and storytellers now need to be included more, especially in strategy and especially in the earlier stages of creating campaigns. And
oh yeah, totally. I think in a lot of our organizing, like when the idea of creative, I don't even want to say creative people, because it's also wrong to reduce, a demographic of creatives,
Sure.
we all have those bones in our body.
Exactly.
But, there is that kind of bifurcation in the movement where when we talk about what can we do with the artists, oh, well, we need a logo, we need a banner, they can, write a poem. It's this very reductive, feels like they're like an industry that we're extracting from, and it doesn't actually honor that kind of prophetic and imaginative power that certain kinds of people really bring to the table strongly.
Yes, and I mean there's also an underlying question, which is it possible to write the future into existence? And that can only be answered and achieved by dreamers and by people who refuse to allow the realities of what they can see in front of them, and dare and have the capacity to imagine something different, and then either to bold or fight for that.
Yeah, I mean, we police our imaginations so hard, and it sounds to me like for you, maybe you can speak to this, finding these means, to articulate your politics, your values, your hopes, your dreams, in a different way than maybe you have in the past with the more normative kind of activism, is already catching a glimpse of that utopia.
Yes, even if it's getting more co-authors, for more people to think wait, can I actually write the future into existence? And the only way you think you're going to figure that out is by picking up a pen or a paintbrush, or being bold to say, hey, this is what I dream, this is what I wish for, this is what I see in the future.
It sounds simple enough, but I think many people are not really there. They're not comfortable to. I tried to do visual art with my sister for the first time, to do serious visual art in the past few years, and I found it very terrifying, actually. I was afraid to make mistakes. I was hyper concerned if I use this color or that color, Sure. It is quite daunting.
Just watch kids play. That's all you got to do. I mean, they're the ones that are tapped into the pure. And we, I think, as we grow tall, I think we don't, maybe our connection to it is not as easy. We maybe perhaps sometimes lose that easy access to it. But I think if you look at the way children play, if you look at the way birds build nests, I mean, I'm sure there must be some stress about building it, but I don't think they get quite as complicated as we do. And then there's also the question of identity and how attached are you to the object that you are creating? Do you really believe that that is an expression of you that other people can then read from it? And if you do, then try to draw with your non-dominant hand. Is it not you? Try to write with your non-dominant hand. That's, and the letters come out all squiggly. What does that mean, or does it mean something?
So 20 years from now, what would you hope to see in this universe of people trying to change the world? What would clowning look like, 20, 30 years from now? Ideally.
Okay, ideally, it would go back to clowns not having to show up at protests and follow the army and the police around, because maybe that layer of the task and form has been accomplished. I think that's ideally. Ideally, we have a global network of people working with these forms. I can imagine in states of repression and states of less repression, but in hyper quick time, being able to transmit and exchange forms and ideas, and to be able to have these solidarity actions that pop up all over the world almost instantaneously, in some ways imitating or mimicking the mycelial network. But in the ideal world, yes, it means that we have gained a few really significant victories from where we stand, and the role of the Joker can go back to ideally for me as a clown in 20 years. In the best case scenario, I will be sitting in a hammock and remembering those days of clowning, when the clown was called out from the trees and the hammocks and the hills and the hermit places and the market stalls to do the function of like what our government and our state apparatus and stuff is supposed to be doing. Yeah.
Well, we wish that hammock for you and for all of us.
And just one final note.
Hi. We hope you enjoyed the conversation on this episode of Troublemakers and feel inspired to stir up some good trouble in your own community. Do feel free to check out our other episodes and subscribe to your preferred podcast app. You can follow us on Instagram at troublemakers.podcast for all the latest updates, behind the scenes content, and sneak peeks of what's coming next. We also love to hear from our listeners. You can write us an email, troublemakersthepodcast@gmail.com. And hey, if you enjoyed this episode, take a moment and share it with a friend or leave us a review. It really helps us grow our community of troublemakers. Keep shaking things up.
So last month, okay, we're talking about ice cream trucks now. We're just going to make a pivot. Yeah, somehow clowns and ice cream trucks in the core of my being, it makes a lot of sense to pair the two together, you know? East Africa has like the ice cream rovers. They move around and they each have their sound. Like in Uganda, one of the most common songs is My Heart Will Go On, the Titanic song, Celine Dion. Celine Dion, right? Yeah. So, if you hear that song and you're a child, you start looking around, your ears perk up, you're looking for ice cream, and you're begging your parents, please give me a coin, I need to go and get a little bit of ice cream. Last month, our youngest has never experienced, they're 2.5. They've never experienced the kind of like the big ice cream truck that shows up and rolls into the neighborhood and, blesses the community with all the sweetness inside of it. So we're at this film festival, and Grandpa was with us, and the youngest got fussy, and Grandpa took Marika outside, because of the fussiness, and then lo and behold, out from the other corner, from behind the buildings, comes an ice cream truck, right? And I think deep in the recesses of ancestral wisdom, Marika knew intuitively, like, this vehicle is full of something that I want.
Yeah.
And maybe the sort of serendipitous connection with you being here and sharing this story, Angus, is not just about the clowning ice cream intersection. But Marika's first ice cream was given to them by somebody in the movement in Johannesburg in South Africa. So
right.
We can maybe make some kind of loose connection here.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and when Marika ate it, it was like this new discovery, like, oh my God, my entire worldview has shifted. They were covered in chocolate, dripping everywhere. It was just a beautiful moment. We still have the picture. So with Grandpa in this moment in Pennsylvania last month, the ice cream truck rolls around, and my dad was so thrilled to have this opportunity, to give Marika ice cream. But you remember, he just took Marika out from like the cinema quickly when Marika was fussing. So then he realized, oh, I don't have my wallet.
Right.
I'm screwed. And, the nature of ice cream trucks is very transient, So
is the moment being lost here?
I think like the person like in charge of the ice cream truck saw in my dad's eyes like that terror, like, oh my gosh, there's only one look when you're standing at an ice cream truck that is like, oh my God, I forgot my wallet, you know? So I think my dad had that look and they knew, and, you know, or did the obligatory, okay, are you all right? You know, and my dad's like, I forgot my wallet, right? So this person, my dad was like, you know, I really want to give my grandchild this ice cream.
This moment.
This beautiful moment, right? This memory maybe. And the person just reaches over and grabs ice cream and gives it to the baby. So it was like this very, like, you know, divine blessing that took place last month.
That's marvelous.